Hi everybody, my name is David and this is All Things Sacred. So I'm coming to you today from my new room, which you can't tell much because I'm just sitting on my bed and this is just a white wall behind me. It's a lot bigger than it was my old previous room, and you'll get to see that in future videos where I move the computer so that you could see a better view of the room. But it's very messy right now, and I know not everyone who watches these videos is on my Facebook page, but if you were on my Facebook page, you would know that I have just got over, or rather am still recovering from a sickness that really resembles COVID-19. My husband will get the test results back tomorrow. So I'm just here in my bed, just kind of, in as relaxed as a position that I can be. I'm going to try to do a full video, but one of the persisting symptoms that I have is that my voice is still going in and out. I have enough energy to do a video, and that's why I'm here doing one, but if my voice can't do it, then I'll have to give up at some point along the way. But let's hope that's not the case, and I'm able to do all this, and then I'll just have a scratchy voice for the rest of the day today. So, the topic that I want to address, even though I'm here sitting all nice and relaxed, is one that isn't a very relaxing or comfortable topic. It's about anger and violence. Anger and violence is going on all around us. We see it every day on our TV. In this time, we see it especially because of all the protests that are happening right now. And these protests, which are mostly peaceful, are being infiltrated by violent members on all sides. I'm not here to make an argument that because personally, if you're on my Facebook page, you'll know that I'm calling out the police riot that's going on, because police are instigating the violence just as much as violent protesters. Not violent protesters, but violent looters and rioters are. So the violence is definitely coming from both sides. And I'm not here to make a point about that. My videos are mainly about the spiritual path. And so I want to talk about the place of violence and anger on the spiritual path. And a lot of people might expect me to be like, I have seen a lot of people call themselves light workers out there who are all about, love and peace and kindness and, saying things softly and sweetly, which is fine, but that's not what a spiritual person necessarily looks like. A spiritual person looks like any type of person. And, not everyone has to walk, in peace and calmness. Even Christ, is known for turning over money tables. And most of the Gospels are him coming up to people rather rudely, rather harshly, calling them hypocrites and fools. And, that's not a nice thing. That's a mean thing. But that meanness is used as a tool. Again, look at Kali. Look at all these stories I've shared of the Devi. Look at Shakti. She doesn't come out and say to the Asuras, "Oh, you lovely little Asuras, you naughty boys, you need to stop it." No, she destroys them. She destroys them. She uses her violence. She uses her righteous anger as a tool. My channel is called All Things Sacred. And in the first video, I talked about how I really include all things in this. So to imagine that I would come here and condemn all anger and all violence as not having a sacred form it doesn't give much thought to what it is that this channel is all about. This channel is about finding the sacred nature of all things. So we see this. We see Christ. We see Shakti. We see Mother and Father, both expressing anger, both using their anger in righteous ways to create change where change is needed. And we too have to emulate this as well. Anger is not something that that just disappears. Anger is not something that when you gain more and more consciousness, more and more awareness, never happens. The same is true of sadness and other, those are the main ones, anger and sadness, that really have their divine form. Even jealousy has a divine form, but I'm not talking about that today. Anger will rise because there is great injustice in the world. And we should see this injustice and not ignore it. Sure, all of this is a play. All of this is entertainment. All of this is sport for the divine consciousness. But we are part of that sport. We are part of that entertainment. We are part of that play. And we have a responsibility as good entertainers to engage in this show that's going on around us. And sometimes that means expressing anger or it's the subsequent violence that comes from it. Because if anger arises and we choose to ignore it, to be like, oh, I'm not really angry, then we do ourselves a disservice because we poison ourselves with eventual hatred and resentment. Those are the lower forms of anger. That's what it could turn into if you don't transmute it into action, into movement, into sometimes violence. Now, I'm not advocating to go out there and to bring violence upon one another because you feel that your ideas are more right. Rather, what I'm saying is that when you feel this buildup of anger as an emotion, express it. Express it, not necessarily by attacking another person, and not necessarily by destroying buildings. You literally could go out there, as most of the peaceful protesters are, and yell. But for some people, and it's completely understandable, yelling is not enough. And the symbol of their anger is so large that the only thing that will be adequate to express what they're feeling would be something like a police precinct burning, as we've seen. And although it is not the best use, it's not the best transmutation, I'm not going to condemn that because no one was hurt. And their frustration was so visible, so large that it needed an outlet, lest it continue to turn in on itself. You know, personally, I used to have a huge anger problem. I would get so angry if someone insulted me or disrespected me or one of my loved ones. I would go into rages. I would fight people. I have been to jail. And the first time I went to jail was when I beat up a guy who was harassing my friend. I took a walking staff and I smashed it on his face and I started pummeling him, and eventually I got arrested by the cops. Nothing much came of that, but you know, it's indicative that I used to have a real anger issue. Luckily at that time I learned how to control my anger, and for a long time I was as though without anger. I was though a completely calm person. But I would still get into debates. I would still get into wrangling with people online. And I would find frustration and resentment growing within me. And I didn't want to express it. Because I thought, if I'm to be spiritually good and whatever, I thought kind was part of that, then I can't be mean. I can't say, these things that are boiling up to the surface. Instead, I'm going to let them boil. And that wasn't good for me. It led up to a point where eventually I had to deal with all of those things I was wanting to express. And, in all honesty, the main reason why I was unable to express these things was because of my people-pleasing conditioning. I'd been conditioned to be kind and to only speak when it's nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, is what people say. But as I've addressed online recently, something far worse than meanness is hypocrisy. Because that's cruelty to your own inner being. To not say something mean, to not say a hurtful truth to someone is that they need to hear. To not say a hurtful truth to someone that they need to hear. Not just because you see a hurtful truth and you want to say it, but that they need to hear, is more cruel than mollycoddling them and trying to people please them, trying to keep a smile on their face. Because then they will go on living with their ignorance. They will go on thinking that their line of ugliness, of ugly thinking, is all right and is right and has no consequence to it whatsoever. If you really care about the other person, oftentimes it means that you'll have to be mean, that you'll have to express your anger, that you'll have, and not necessarily at them, but at the injustice that they stand with. Because that's the form that anger takes when it has a spiritual dimension to it. Is that it's not going out there and being like, you're a racist and I'm angry at you because you're a racist. No. It's angry at the conditioning that has been instilled into this person. The injustice of the conditioning. This person over here who you might be angry at for being a racist. They don't realize that they're a slave to their own thoughts. They think that they are thinking for themselves. They think that they have formed these ideas of their own accord when they don't realize all the conditioning that has gone into their worldview holds them a slave to that thought process, to that belief system. That the belief system isn't theirs, but they belong to the belief system that has been created for them. No one's an original thinker. No one holds ideas that are, an island from everything else. Even if their thoughts and the ego that they've created for themselves is this island, the waves of the thoughts of all the people in the world who they've interacted with or not interacted with reach the shores, reach the sands on the shore of their own personal ego island and influence it. Bring the air from other people. Their words bring the oxygen necessary for an individual to breathe on their own little ego island. And for that reason, we can't hold so strong to our belief systems, our ideas. We can't believe that it is our own. Because, again, it's been created for us. We've been conditioned to believe this. And one thing I was conditioned with, again, be nice. Only say kind things. But again, this is not the way to be. If it is right for you to speak out, then speak out. But that doesn't mean that you could go out there and just be mean. I happen to be mean sometimes. I don't care. I'm not concerned with how other people view me. If I'm being mean, it's because Mother is directing me personally. This is my own experience. Mother is directing me that these words should be shared because maybe, they are like a thick wall that you need a hammer to break through. I'm, and I will be mean to everyone. There are some people who I am, who I will be extra kind to, extra sweet to, because that's what is called for. Every situation calls for a different tool. You don't, bring a hammer if you're trying to put a window in, but you don't, bring a paintbrush to, hammer out the shape of a rock, to hammer out a stone. We have to use the proper tool. So sometimes meanness is appropriate. Sometimes anger, is called for. But when you instead take that anger and so the thing is, you could be there and you could express your anger, but if you're holding on to resentment and hatred and maliciousness to anyone, any group of people, that's where it's an ugly thing. But even this has its sacred spot, because when a person is doing something the wrong way and they're causing themselves undue stress and anxiety with their resentment, when they're causing themselves all this misery with their resentment, well, eventually the resentment and the misery is going to come out, and they will be a symbol of how you should not be. So in that way, that's sacred too. They become a sign for all of us of what we should avoid if we want to live a happy life. And isn't it so paradoxical? Isn't it so strange that to live a happy life doesn't mean that you're always sweet? To live a happy life, to live a fulfilled life, doesn't mean that you're always one way. Sometimes it means to be happy, you have to be cruel, or seemingly so at least. Because even if the appearance is cruel, if there's a kind heart behind it, that's really the truth. And only we can know whether we are being hypocritical or whether we are being sincere. And that again, that's far more important. Honesty and truth is far more important than kindness and niceties any day. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything more I have to say. I don't, you can tell my voice is already starting to go. But, that is what I wanted to say, was that it's the way to be a truly fulfilled and happy person, as can be seen by this video, doesn't look like anything. It means that in every situation, you are able to give the proper response. That in every obstacle, every piece of work that you need to do, you're always able to pull out the proper tool. And that is a lot of work, because you have to know how to respond to any given situation. The key is being able to see the divine. When you are able to recognize the sacredness of all of life, you will end up finding the way that you have to be in any given situation, because you won't be approaching it alone. You'll be approaching it with God or Goddess behind you, guiding every step of the way, guiding all of your actions, so that you are able to give the proper response. And again, sometimes that response is anger. Sometimes that response is meanness, but not always. But we shouldn't condemn anyone just because they are mean. Are they being honest? Are they being true behind the meanness? Is what they're saying necessary and good even? Just because it's mean doesn't make it not so. So yeah, a little out of it right now, so I'm kind of, petering off here at the end. I hope you all take care. I will be coming on to do another video here soon, and wish you all the best. Be safe.